another of these rotating LED disco lights, but this one's quite unusual in that it comes in a downlight frame for mounting into a ceiling, and it is swivelable in that frame. So I got a couple of these. Well, they were only selling them in pairs, so that's why I ended up with a couple, which is handy because after I've shown you the other function of this, I'll show you the bits of one that I've already taken to bits. So this is audio activated. So when it detects loud noise, the lights will blink out, which is actually quite annoying. It also would make a great children's toy at Christmas. It could be disco light that crawls across the table, dragging live wires behind it. Yes. Anyway, I'll just unplug that and get it out the way in all its disco-tastic glory. And I'll show you the bits that are inside. Here we go. And when I say I've stripped it to bits, I took all the heat shrink off these circuit boards and everything. So the construction is as follows. The circuit board has some little sort of lips on it. It's not perfectly circular, it's got sort of wings, if you'd call them that. And it sits into this frame, and then this bit screws in with all the electronics stuffed in there. And when I say stuffed in, I mean absolutely crammed in, because, well, they could have cut these wires down a bit. And it really was so stuffed that I could only get it like quarter of a turn, then I had to poke the microphone back in, then quarter of a turn and poke the microphone back in. The wires were just so quite difficult to get to bits initially, but it's now taken to bits. The unit it's got an aluminium core PCB with 3 LEDs in it, really quite typical. The 3 LEDs are in series across the output of this tiny little 3-watt switching power supply, and it is dead on 3 watt. It really is putting out 3 watts, and both of them measured exactly the same, which is quite neat. Then this has a little sort of threaded insert with a hole in it, so presumably, I don't know if it's designed to hang baubles or something off as well, or other things, but this screws into the end over that, and that rotates on the motor shaft when it's in operation. The whole assembly goes into the downlighter frame, and it's got these 2 pins, and they just sort of go in and get locked in place by 2 countersunk screws, so not much there. But what's really interesting about this is the way it flashes the lights. And I thought this little circuit here, which isn't all that interesting because it's just a chip on board, it's a few components and a chip on board, and it's very clear from the fact that the resin, the black blob of resin that covers the chip, has flowed over some of the other surface mount components. It's obvious that the surface mount components get put on first, then the chip gets placed and then blobbed over. But the way it flashes the circuitry is it just shorts it out. It absolutely just dead shorts across the output of the switching regulator, and that's what makes all the lights turn out and the motor stop. And in doing so, it kind of kills its own power supply, so then it comes back on, and the next time it detects a beat, it just shunts the power supply again. So I thought, well, that's quite an odd way of doing it, but I guess maybe this was designed for, I mean, it's obvious that it just shunts when it detects a beat or loud noise. I'm not sure if they've repurposed it from something else. But while I was at it, I decided to measure the power of this unit as it was being shorted out. So I kept shorting out random numbers of LEDs, and as you shorted them out, the power it drew from the main supply went down. So it's obvious that it's kind of like a primary feedback current regulator is the best way to describe this little supply. It's not got any physical feedback from the secondary. All it's got in the secondary is 1 diode and 1 capacitor, a very small capacitor, which is probably just as well given that this thing's shorting it out. On the input, the circuitry has 1 switching transistor. It's got a single diode and capacitor for providing the mains input DC. And then it's got a little surface mount transistor there, and just a few components, some of which are underneath this capacitor. It's super simple, no chips or anything like that. The back of the circuit board is just solder joints. So quite neat, but I decided to see what sort of power does this take when it's physically shorted out completely. And it went down to about 1/3 of a watt. It's really quite impressive. It didn't seem to be bothered by the fact it was being shorted all the time. So it did make me wonder, you know, wouldn't it have been better actually putting this audio circuit in series with the motor so that every time there was a beat the motor just turned a wee bit but the lights stayed on? Don't know. It's very odd. It's slightly annoying actually. It's a very irritating thing. I think the best thing I could do actually that would really improve this greatly is just cut this bit of circuitry off because it's really, really annoying. Sorted. But yeah, interesting little lights.